Good evening and welcome to ITV London. I'm Katie Barnfield. We are live on Facebook and YouTube, and tonight we're going to be talking all things Notting Hill Carnival. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Matthew Phillip, who is the Executive Director of the Carnival. He's the new boss. Make sure that you comment, ask questions for Matthew. If you want to ask him anything, just put your comments below the video. So Matthew, let's just start off with your history with Carnival. I believe you've been going for around 40 years, is that right?
Yeah, I'm 46 now, and I've been going since I was a child in a buggy, according to my dad. I started actually actively participating when I was about 9 or 10 in costumes, and then a few years after that I started to play in the steel band.
Amazing,
amazing. Many years.
And now you are the boss.
Yeah, well, it's not just me. It sounds big, but you know, there's a massive team that goes into running Carnival. So we've got a really good team of people that we in the office, and then we've got an advisory council and a board. So it's a broad thing. There's no dictator here. Carnival only has a safe future if it's broadened out and more people have a say in what goes on, and that includes the bands, mass bands, sound systems, steel bands, but as well as people from the local community, because it's on their doorstep. They're giving up their homes for a couple of days every year.
How did you get involved in running it?
Well, I run a building in Notting Hill area called the Tabernacle, which is a part of Carnival Village Trust, and we've been actively involved in Carnival for 10 years now. Carnival Village Trust is made up of a group of carnivalists that have come together to actively promote carnival arts. So we've always worked closely with a lot of the bands. A lot of the bands have their launches. We have 2 buildings. We have one in Notting Hill in RBKC, and we have another building in Westminster. And there's spaces there for people to do workshops, and we have a sewing room, tuning room. A lot of carnivalists hold meetings in one or other of our buildings. So when the opportunity came up to bid for some funding to get involved in the organisation of Carnival, we jumped at the chance, and you know we really feel we can make a difference, and broaden it. Rather than just a few people having all the information and nobody knowing. It's time that it kind of broadened out and everyone had more of a clear idea of what's going on. Within a few weeks after Carnival, we planned to publish, detailed information on the finances and what was raised in terms of sponsorship, funding, and where that money went. So that's,
You must have some incredible memories having been involved in it and having gone to it for so many years. What are your favourite moments of Carnival?
Yeah, I mean, I've watched it grow over the years from, a much smaller event where there wasn't even I remember it when there wasn't even a real route, People would come out, the steel bands would come out, and bands with sound systems, and they'd go wherever they want, really. There was no route, but obviously it grew to, it had to be organised, so it grew after so many years. It had to be organised and a proper route had to be put in, but that kind of freedom, I kind of missed that, but we can never go back to that. But the fact that, up to 1 million people take to the streets of Carnival is, it's a freedom in itself, and it's something we should cherish and look after.
So let's talk about your vision for this year. Just give me an overview of what you're going to plan to do with it.
Well, this year I wouldn't say it's my vision, because we've really consulted with a lot of people, carnivalists, local community, and things that we're putting in place are not based on my vision or the vision of any individuals within our organisation. It's after listening to a lot of people within the Carnival community, as well as local community, whether they're for Carnival or not, because everybody's voices should be heard. So, one of the things that we're doing this year, and it's after the consultation we've done with people, is reintroduce community stewarding, which has been lacking in Carnival for a number of years, to focus and highlight on the children's bands that take part in Carnival. And we just want to try and promote Carnival for what it is. There's sometimes a lot of negative media attention around the Carnival, and we kind of forget about the positive things that Carnival does. It really brings people together. It's a unique event, and we just feel it's something that everybody should celebrate. So.
Well, I have to talk about that sort of perception of Carnival. I mean, obviously there are going to be challenges involved in running it, and violence is a kind of a running theme. A lot of people think it's a particularly violent event. There were 300 arrests last year, I think more than 400 the year before. How are you going to tackle that?
Well, we're just actively encouraging people to come to Carnival to enjoy themselves. You know, Carnival is a community event, and we don't want to mar it with violence, and it's unnecessary. This is a chance for London to come together and show how inclusive it is.
But there must be a challenge in tackling that. I mean, you have so many people together on the streets. How do you
a lot of work and planning
nitty-gritty
has gone into kind of where we're going to be deploying the community stewards in conjunction with the stewards as well as the police. It's a joint effort, you know. It's not just one organisation. Carnival is a mega event. It's not a little street party, which is how it started. It's grown to a mega event, and there's a lot of logistics and planning that has to go into it, and that's in consultation with a lot of agencies.
So talk to me about those community stewards. How is that going to work? How many are you going to have, and how?
So we're going to have up to 200. Just under half of them are going to be deployed into kind of teams that are kind of moving around and kind of, you know, greeting people as well as facilitating the smooth flow of the bands.
Are these
making sure
volunteer
people.
stewards,
No, they're being paid.
Yeah.
So we've been given some funding by the GLA, which enables us to engage the stewarding company Mackenzie Arnold, and it also enables us to train local people. We've been running 2 courses. One is an MVQ in stewarding and crowd management, and the other one is SIA training, and we'll be deploying them in teams, dovetailing with the stewards from the stewarding company, as well as with, you know, being supported by the police.
So if, say these stewards are on the street and they do see some violence happening, what kind of powers are they going to have? What will they be able to do?
They don't have any powers. If there is violence on the street, that rightly so is a job for the police. So if, you know, if they saw something happen, you know, if there was some negotiations to be had and the management, but we wouldn't expect stewards, whether they're recruited from the community or from the company that we're engaging in, to tackle violence. You know, crime and disorder is a job for the police, and they will be supporting us in that. But we're really hoping that people don't come with that attitude, and, you know, try and be respectful of the event, not least because we're also kind of, you know, it's a significant year. We will still be holding a 72-second silence on each day to respect and mark for Grenfell, the victims of Grenfell, and also showing support for the survivors and the community. And we think that, you know, we're hopeful that people will just come along and respect that, and not drag it down with violence.
You've mentioned before that you think a lot of things need to change from how Carnival is at the moment. How do you get away from that? Even if it isn't the most violent event, it does have a reputation. How do you get away from that? How do you change that perception of it?
Tell me why you think it's got this reputation.
I think just people just see how many arrests have been. I mean, you said yourself,
if you compare that, you know, number for number, it's an event with 1 million people. You know, there are football matches that have more arrests and have not even 5% of the numbers.
What is it? What is it then that's making people think that this is a violent event?
It's because it's the numbers. But, you know, if you're comparing events, it should be done on a scale basis. You can't compare an event that has 100 people or even 5,000 to an event that's got almost 1 million people. It's a massive event, and, you know, inevitably that it will scale up incidents. The thing is, you know, in terms of violence, London and the UK on the whole is kind of in the backdrop of a surge of, you know, violence, and especially knife crime. It's a concern that we're planning for, but, you know, in terms of trying to mitigate that and work to address those issues, we've been working closely with the police and our stewarding company for the last 5 months heavily on this, and we think that we can try and push out a message that will get people to come in and be positive around Carnival. But there inevitably will be things that happen on the day, but we just have to deal with it, you know, when it comes.
Yeah.
It's a shame. The whole violence thing is a real shame because the initial spark that brought about Carnival was the murder of Kelso Cochrane. That was a horrific racially motivated attack, which was the spark that initiated later on the idea of, you know, the street fair that Ronnie Lasset started and has now evolved into what we have today. So it's kind of, you know, I'm sure, you know, it's a shame that, you know, it was created to kind of combat that and address that issue, and it's a shame that some majority of the young people come to the event with, you know, with a different focus in mind, when in actual fact the vast majority of people that come to Carnival come to either take part or just look and enjoy and have a nice time. And it is a shame, but, you know, all we can do is work hard to try and combat that and get people to understand the message of Carnival. It's about freedom and unity, and, you know, those two words don't go hand in hand with violence.
Yeah. I'll just take a couple of the comments we've had on Facebook at the moment. A lot of them have been underlining how difficult it's going to be to sort of change this opinion about Carnival. Sasha Killington says, why is it still allowed to go ahead? More violence every year. Bill Brown says, cancel it and relieve the pressure on the police, who will have more days off cancelled. The Carnival is too big now to hold on the streets of London. What do you say to that about these issues of people thinking that the event has just got too big? Because I know that you're against ticketing, aren't you?
Yes, absolutely. It's a free event, so, you know, it would defeat the whole object if it was, you know, it's a free street event, Carnival. So.
What about these concerns that people have that it is just because you say, you know, it is 1 million people? It must be difficult to manage that amount of people on what are quite sort of narrow streets a lot of the time as well.
Well, I think it's a safe event, and I think if you talk to crowd safety experts, it's a lot easier to manage 1 million people when you have streets that kind of naturally put them in different places than trying to have, you know, 1 million people in one space, which would be a lot more dangerous, I would argue. Yeah.
I mean, coming away from the issue of security slightly, but of crowds, I know something that has put people off in the past is just because there are this many people, sometimes it is difficult just to get in and out. And, you know, sometimes you can't get to a tube station for like half a mile around. Are you going to be able to do anything this year to sort of manage the crowds?
Yeah, we've launched a new app which is available, and it'll give people information as to where the sound systems are, where they can find toilets, up-to-date information on the train stations, where the closest buses are. But in addition to that, it can point out to people where, you know, if an area is particularly congested, it can point you in the direction to go out of there. So the app will be, you know, a very useful tool for any Carnival goers, whether they're looking for something to eat, a toilet, or their way home, or clear streets that aren't congested. Yeah.
I think you've mentioned as well that you want to have the Carnival slightly more organised than it has been in the past. You've said that it has been slightly disorganised. I don't know whether you mean, you know, you want to have the route slightly more organised, or just the way it's run.
I'm not sure I've said that it hasn't been organised in the past. I would say that a lot of people have put in a lot of work in organising Carnival over the years. You know, otherwise you know, we wouldn't have had it. Carnival has evolved, and it's, you know, it's come about by the contribution of many people over many years. So I would never say it wasn't organised before.
Perhaps it was just about the kind of security issue or whatever it was. Let's talk about your ideas for how Carnival is going to go this year. You've mentioned that you want to have a bit less corporate, not less corporate sponsorship, but you think perhaps it's getting slightly too commercial. How are you going to sort of bring it back to the original roots of Carnival?
Again, I never said it was too commercial. There hasn't been a sponsor in Carnival for a number of years, so that's not the case. I think for Carnival to flourish, it needs a number of things. It needs increased funding, but it also needs the support of yourselves and the media, etc., to paint the true picture of it. And we're really actively trying to let people know what Carnival is about. If people go on our social medias, they can get a bit of history and understanding. Most people that are probably tuned into this at the moment or just watch the news have just been used to seeing the headlines and the stories over the years, but there's a lot more to Carnival. You know, the young people that put hours and hours and weeks into work, whether working on costumes or rehearsing in still bands, the Calypsonians, all the work that they do, the sound systems are, you know, a lot of work goes into putting a sound system on at Carnival. If they don't just turn up on the day and plug in, there's a lot of things that they have to do, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. How are you going to engage the local community more than perhaps, because I know that people who live in the area have concerns about Carnival happening on their doorstep. What are you going to do to sort of involve
We've
them more?
actively been consulting with all the artistic disciplines of Carnival as well as local community. I'll give you an example. So we met with, you know, residents of Westminster Council, and we spoke to them about our ideas, and they welcomed the fact of being able to speak to the organisers. And based on, after their feedback, one of the things they said, they'd like more toilets. Westminster this year, I think they've almost doubled the amount of toilets that they're putting in on their part of the footprint. So that's an example of how we can engage with the community and try and negotiate and make changes that they would like to see.
Yeah.
It's not for me or us as organisers to say this is what it needs to be. It needs to be consultation. Carnival's too big an event to be run and have a kind of dictatorship or one or two people calling all of the shots.
Does that worry you? Does that kind of make you sad in a way that sometimes the people in the local area who you'd love to have involved with it sometimes have such a negative perception of it?
Some people are just negative about anything, you know. I have to be real about it. Some people just, you know, are going to be negative about anything that happens. But you just got to look at the pictures of people at Carnival. The vast majority of people that come to Carnival enjoy it. They come back year after year. You know, I would say that most of the residents that are in the Carnival footprint actually support Carnival.
Mm-hmm. Just having some comments coming through on Facebook about this. Charlie Angel says, you've not been actively working with residents. Put it in the park. I guess that's a reference to Hyde Park. There was a suggestion at one point, wasn't there, that it would be...
I've never mentioned once putting Carnival into Hyde Park.
Oh no, you're against, aren't you, putting it into Hyde Park? But some people had campaigned to have it moved there. That is something that you're completely against, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was born in the streets of Notting Hill, and it should stay. It wouldn't be Notting Hill Carnival if it went into Hyde Park, for example.
Mm-hmm. I guess people are just, you know, it's again these concerns about having so many people on the streets and, you know, residents worrying about having people on the streets. Do you not think having it in sort of more of an enclosed area like Hyde Park would address some of those concerns?
No, as I just said a moment ago, I would say that's unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the way the streets divide people off, if you had that amount of people in one space, I don't know of an event that has that amount of people in one space, to be honest.
Mm. And you think it would lose a bit of the spirit of Carnival being on the streets if that...
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, sure. So let's talk a bit about, again, about this year's event. Sunday is always traditionally sort of Children's Day.
Yes.
How are you going to sort of, because obviously there is this kind of negative perception a lot about it, how are you going to bring that back and make that for children?
Well, it's how we're planning to start the route. So the children's bands will be going first, and we won't be having anything else starting on the route until we're comfortable that the children's bands are on the route and they're moving comfortably around. And then, you know, that's where, you know, we're focusing on children because they're the future of Carnival. Without them, there'd be no Carnival in 20 odd years. And it's a children's event. The adults have Monday, and you know, Sunday in terms of the parade is for children.
Mm-hmm. Do you worry at all that people may not perceive it as a family-friendly event and may not want to bring their children there? Do you think this year is going to be different?
Well, you know, it's about planning. You know, I would say it is a family-friendly event. You just got to plan your day and work out where you'd like to go. Meanwhile Gardens, for instance, is a very family-friendly environment at Carnival. Mm-hmm. They have a stage show which has a children's entertainer, and they have various food stalls in there. They're just along by the canal. You can sit on the grass and watch the parade go by you. So if you have a family, and there are other areas within the Carnival that you can find safe places to be.
Mm-hmm. You were at Downing Street today, weren't you?
Yes.
With one of the children's bands. Talk to me about that.
Well, we went with actually, I think it was 10 children's costume bands, came along with about 4 children in their costumes. We had a young steel band, We also had one of the sound systems come along and one of the food traders at Carnival, so we gave Downing Street a bit of a flavour of Notting Hill Carnival. And because this year our main focus is to prioritise children, that's the element that we chose to showcase.
What can people expect if they turn up on Sunday or Monday this year? Just run me through a bit of the events that they can see.
They can expect to see 80 bands parading around the route. That's 70 odd costume bands as well as 10 steel bands. There's also 8 Brazilian bands that will be on the parade. We've got 3 stages within Carnival, and there's also 34 sound systems that they can go and enjoy. So there's something for everybody, not to mention the food, the atmosphere and the people. You know, people is what makes Carnival.
What do you think is going to make this year's event stand out from previous events?
I think we're really actively focusing on the children, and that definitely will be highlighted. We're going to make sure that we capture lots of images so people get to see it. You have to look very hard, you know, on social media or even on the news to see positive things, because, you know, like you say, normally it's about people's concerns about crime and violence, but there's so much more. You know, each band, you know, there's many, each one of the bands and sound systems and steel bands, etc., they represent mini communities. So this is the communities of London coming together.
Do you think that Carnival in previous years has come away from its roots in terms of the communities that it was organised for? Is there a way that you can get back to that? Or do you
Well, one of the things we're doing is reintroducing the community stewards. There have been no local people for a number of years, kind of actively in key roles as part of the stewarding, so that's a key step. The fact that we're engaging and talking to local residents and residents associations is a step. So we, you know, we'll be doing all that we can to make sure that people feel involved and included.
Given the scandal that's happened this year, do you think it's a good opportunity at Carnival to raise awareness of Windrush? Is there anything that's going to be happening around that?
Well, the Windrush is ultimately, you know, it's always been part of Carnival. If you even go back to Kelso Cochrane, he was of the Windrush generation. You know, most of the people that helped to create Carnival are people that are of the Windrush generation. So Carnival has always been intrinsically linked to the Windrush. Throughout the years, there's been many bands that have, you know, created ships and had costumes that talk about the Windrush generation. It's always been there, always will be there, because it's part of how it was created in the first place.
Getting some more questions coming through now on Facebook. Jeanette Armstrong says, what activities will be available for the kids? Because I'll be attending with my kids for the first time.
Well, like I said, they can go along to Meanwhile Gardens. There's a children's stage there, and I think they have like children's entertainer on there throughout the day, and they can see the costumes going by, as well as just wandering around and visiting, you know, trying out the different foods that are on available, popping along to one of the stages, or finding somewhere along the route to see the parade go by. Sunday's a really good opportunity to see the children in their costumes.
Do you think there's any way that Notting Hill, because obviously we were talking before about Rio Carnival and about how Rio has this kind of fantastic reputation, and then sometimes Notting Hill is dogged by this reputation of violence. Is there a way to make Notting Hill the sort of the biggest and like the carnival that people think about? So
one of the things that we've done this year is change the way that the route operates, in particular around the judging zone. So there's more of a flow, so when people are filming, press, or even just individuals, that there's always a constant flow of different costumes and bands coming through. When you see Rio, you typically will see a view of the kind of grand parade that they have and these wonderful floats and costumes coming through. The way we've managed the route in recent years hasn't really facilitated that for broadcast media to actually capture it, because there was a lot of gaps in the route. So by making it more smooth, we're hoping that those images will then go out to broader and, you know, wider to the world, so people can see the true elements of Carnival.
Any plans to have a Carnival Queen, Rio style?
That's one of the things, an aspiration for the future is one of the things we used to have was something called the Costume Gala, which is, it's not something that can be done at Carnival, it's another event, and that's an event where the biggest and best costumes from each band come along and they're judged, and there's a queen announced and a king announced, so that's definitely an aspiration for the future.
Amazing. I think that's pretty much everything we have to cover.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Matthew, for joining me tonight. Are you excited for Carnival this weekend, just before we go?
Yeah,
what are you most looking forward to?
Again, I'm looking forward to seeing all the children in their costumes on Sunday. Yeah, it's going to be. I think it's going to be a real highlight of the weekend, especially after getting a bit of a preview of them this afternoon on Downing Street. There was one young lady from a band called Tropical Isles. I think she was 2 years old. I think she's going to become a little bit of a star at the weekend. Her costume was amazing.
Amazing. And where will you be on the day? Sort of running
Everywhere.
around, organising everything. Well, such good luck for the weekend. Thank you so much for joining us on Facebook and YouTube tonight. That was ITV London.